Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 9 deadline decisions where I'll be answering your final questions and dilemmas before the deadline and discussing my final team thoughts as well. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, this is going live early on Friday morning, and if you're watching this immediately after me uploading, thank you very much for the support. I appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful morning. If you're watching this later in the day, I equally hope you've had a fantastic day thus far. But yeah, I'm recording this late on Thursday for a Friday morning upload because it is a Friday evening UK time deadline, so please do not miss the deadline. But as a result, that of course means that I don't have info from all of the Friday press conferences. And I think 16 of the 20 managers have their press conference on Friday. So basically, we've not had much press conference update information, but there were negative updates on two players that I think will be in quite a few teams, which is Joachim Andersen and also Alderete too. So briefly on Andersen, we know that he went off injured against Arsenal in Game Week 8. What Marco Silva said was Andersen, as we suspected, and as I mentioned after the match, it's a muscular injury. Not so serious, but he's going to be out. He's not going to be available for the Newcastle match. So, I've seen a few suggestions that they are hoping that he is back this side of the international break, but at the very worst, it will be post the November international break. So we're probably looking at somewhere between 1 to 3 matches out. And as a result, I think if you can, I would keep him. For me, Andersen still is the best 4.5 million and below defender. Fulham are 6th this season for XGC, despite not keeping many clean sheets. And we know that he is right up there as one of the top 3 or 4 defenders for defensive contributions. So unless you desperately want to bench boost this week, or you have other defenders that are injured or out for this week and you need to sell him, I would probably try to hold on if you can. If you are to replace him, I still think Richards for me is the defender that gets closest to him around that price bracket. And then on Alderete, the quote that came out was, he's under the concussion protocol with daily assessment, so we'll keep monitoring the progress through the end of this week and into the next one to see if he will be available for Everton. But for now, it's too early to tell. In a similar way to Andersen, unless you are bench boosting this week and you desperately need a defender, I wouldn't sell him. Alderete, along with probably like Rodon, Mukiele, and maybe still even Esteve, is one of the better sub 4.5 million defenders. So there we go. Andersen, Alderete, both going to be out. Deal with that as you'd like. Let's now answer your questions. So guys, as always, let's discuss those key benching decisions that you have. And it is pretty difficult for a lot of people this week. And a lot of people might have been leaning towards a bench boost, but maybe the injuries to the likes of Andersen and Alderete has made that difficult. And I'm looking at myself here. So all of a sudden, we do have benching decisions to make. As I always say, with benching decisions, with one-off, one-week decisions, it's very difficult to predict the future. So I would try to trust your gut feeling wherever possible. You can look at things like bookies odds, you can look at projected points, but no one knows in a one-off week what is going to happen. I think for me, GW9 is an incredible form, and I think he's a player that is going massively under the radar. Someone did ask about benching him. Absolutely in no world right now. Would I? Do I think that at some point he might get benched? Yes, but I don't think that's coming soon. He's playing very well, so GW9 would definitely be starting. I've got Enzo towards the top of the list. Absolutely brilliant footballer on pens. I think Spurs are looking a bit vulnerable at the back at the moment. Jean-Philippe Mateta, I've got right at the top. It's just difficult to bench a man like that. I'm recording this after the Crystal Palace game on Thursday, and I know they didn't score in that game, but they accumulated 1.6 XG, and Mateta had 0.8 XG and missed 2 big chances. And as much as, by the way, in the last 3 games, Mateta has missed 7 big chances and he's had 10. 10 big chances in 3 games, missed 7. That's not good, right? You don't want a player that's missing 7 big chances in 3 games. He's also had 10. He's just a player right now, and Crystal Palace are a team right now that are getting so many chances. Now, you might find it weird that I've got Mateta towards the top starting, and then I follow that up with Timber, Gabriel, and Calafiori right up there as well. But sometimes, like, this is a big decision and a big debate in FPL around clashes in FPL. You might say, how have you got Mateta really high, but also Arsenal defence? I'm just viewing each asset in isolation. Do I think Mateta in any week right now is great? On pens, good minutes, yes. But do I also always think that Arsenal defenders have a good chance for a clean sheet? Also, yes. So as much as it seems a bit contradictory, I still think they're really good assets and I would have them towards the top. I've got Kudus quite high towards the top as well. We're going to discuss Kudus in a second. I don't mind potentially selling Kudus because as much as he passes the eye test, Spurs aren't really clicking and he's not shown too much goal threat. But in any given week, I don't have a huge issue with starting him. And I kind of feel the same with a lot of those mid-price midfielders like Paquetá, Minte, Sarr. They're always sort of in that middle of that pack there. And even with a difficult fixture this week, again, in a similar way to what I said with Mateta, I don't mind starting Ismaila Sarr because I think he's a very good footballer and Crystal Palace are just creating so many chances right now. I'm trying to think what some of the key decisions were about. Tijani Reijnders, obviously a player that a lot of people are asking about. I've got Tijani Reijnders below Ismaila Sarr, below Paquetá, below Minte. I've actually got Tijani Reijnders below Tarkowski and Munoz. If you're listening rather than watching, I'm trying to read it out for you. So that's where Reijnders is. Which players is Reijnders above? I've got Reijnders above Xhaka, just about, although Xhaka will get Defcon, so maybe you just back the Defcon. I've got Reijnders above Rodon, Stack, Esteve, Crystal Palace defenders like Richards and Gay, and also Van der Ven and Mukiele. But you can see Reijnders is quite far down the list. There's a couple of reasons for that. Villa at home are usually a bit better defensively, but they are struggling still to kick into gear. We don't know how good his minutes will be. 2 games in a row in the Premier League, he's played under 75 minutes. The most recent game was 58 minutes. Then he was benched in the Champions League, and his replacement in the form of Bernardo Silva played extremely well. You do worry about Reijnders' minutes. So even if his minutes were perfect and I knew he was getting 90, he wouldn't be that much higher up the list. But given the slight doubts there as well, I would be happy to play some of these other defenders and other midfielders, such as even a Dewsbury Hall or an Ismaila Sarr, who don't have the best fixtures instead. So hopefully that makes sense. You can glance at the list yourself as well. But yeah, I'm taking into account minutes, fixtures, a bit of vibe, eye test, Defcon potential data and all of that. But realistically, like I say, if you trust your gut feeling, more often than not, you'll at least be happy that you trusted yourself. So guys, let's discuss some of your key transfers that you're looking at this week and whether or not I would make them. As always, just my opinion. And I know a lot of transfers this week involve 3+ free transfers, where maybe you're downgrading a couple of players to upgrade elsewhere. So obviously here, because I can't look at every set of combination of transfers, I'm just looking at transfers in isolation. But I hope that will still be helpful, even if your transfer is a part of a bigger set of transfers, if that makes sense. So let's start with Tijani Reijnders. As I've just alluded to, his minutes have dropped, his performances haven't been great from an FPL perspective, and the fixtures aren't really there to attack for Man City right now. So if in one move, or as a set of moves where you don't mind the other downgrades, you can get from Tijani Reijnders to Enzo Fernandez, that is the easiest decision I've ever made. One of my YouTube members, and by the way, feel free to become a member, just click the join button. One of my YouTube members messaged me early this evening, and they had like 1.4 million in the bank, and they sent me their team and said, what would you do? And I said, that is the easiest Tijani Reijnders to Enzo Fernandez I've ever seen in my life. Now, does Enzo come without issues? No. Let me list the issues, just in case you want me to try and put you off of Enzo. He's playing Sunderland this week, who have not conceded many goals this season, and have been pretty resolute. Obviously, Alderete not being there makes him a bit weaker, but I think Ballard and Mukiele are fine. So not necessarily as fantastic of a fixture as it first looked. We don't know 100% that he takes all penalties. He gave one to Esteval in the Champions League. Can we guarantee that he won't give one to JOAO Pedro, or even that JOAO Pedro didn't give him the first penalty in the Premier League to start with? We can't. He's not taken as many set pieces recently. And on top of that, with GW looking pretty good as the 9 and Delat being back very soon, he may be pushed back into a deeper position. So there are some issues. I'm not saying he's like a game breaker and you have to get him in your team. But if you've got a player like Tijani Reijnders, who really just doesn't look like a good asset in any regard right now, and you've got the money or ability to get to Enzo, it feels obvious. I do still really like Iliman Ndiaye, by the way, and a lot of people were looking at Reijnders to Ndiaye or some other players to him, and I think he's great. Great footballer, on penalties, good minutes, not the best data, but also a pretty good finisher, good ball striker as well. And I like the fixtures for Everton coming up, and I actually don't mind the fixture this week against Spurs. You could argue that's an even better fixture, maybe, than Enzo against Sunderland. So yeah, I really like him. And I also like Ismaila Sarr. Now, this week, it feels maybe not as worth doing Reijnders to Sarr. But basically, all of that together, if you can get Reijnders to a better midfielder, I would make the move. So I've given it the green colour there. On Kudus to Enzo, Ndiaye, Sarr, I definitely wouldn't do Kudus to Sarr this week, because I actually think arguably Kudus is a better option given the fixture. And this doesn't feel like a transfer that you need to rush out and make. If I was sat there and I was really happy with my team, I had 3 or 4 free transfers, and I was just like, do you know what? I just really want Enzo Fernandez. Then yeah, I'd happily do it. But other than that, yes, Spurs haven't been great. Yes, Kudus isn't taking many shots. But I've just listed the issues with Enzo Fernandez, and Iliman Ndiaye is not taking many shots. His goal threat isn't that much higher than Mohamed Kudus this season. Now, he's on penalties, of course, which is a really, really nice bonus. But I just think in a single week, I wouldn't mind going into this game week with Kudus rather than an Enzo or Enjoy. So it's kind of one of those where the reason I've given it the yellow, I don't mind it. If you tell me you want to do Kudus to Enzo, I'd feel pretty okay about that. The next one I'm finding quite difficult because I'm biased in both directions, which is would I do Bruno Fernandes to Saka? Now, let me first say, if this is just a single move, would I just do Bruno Saka? If you've got the third Arsenal slot open, you've got the money in the bank, it's just a straight swap. I would be very tempted to do it. Now, the only reason I'm hesitating slightly is fixture-wise. I quite like the fixture for Bruno this week. I can imagine he'll do quite well. And I have always thought Bruno is a good asset. I've always thought he's overpriced, and I think he still is overpriced. But if you ignore the price, because you own him at that price, he's actually really decent. Defcon, assist threat, a bit of goal threat, should still be on penalties, take set pieces. And because he's just such a monster on the pitch, when he gets a single assist, he'll get 2 or 3 bonus quite often. And Manchester United are creating chances at the moment. So I actually don't mind Bruno as an asset. And I'm a bit biased because I'm a Manchester United fan. But on the flip side, I sold Bruno for Saka last week. So I always also have that bias of I kind of like the move. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it last week. So I'm going to sit right on the fence and give it that yellow colour. I don't mind. I probably would do this switch. If I just had the money to do it and the availability to do it, I probably would. That being said, this could certainly wait for next week when Saka plays Burnley. That is probably the slightly better pivot point to bring in Saka for Bruno. If it's part of a double move to maybe sell Bruno and Gyökeres to Saka and Mateta or something like that, that does feel like it can also wait a week once again. Maybe get another week on see how Man United are. Maybe just get that one final week to just see, because Gyökeres looks like he might be starting to click. It's not the ideal entry point for Mateta, so I guess it depends what set of moves this is part of. But I guess in isolation, do I think Saka is a better asset than Bruno? Yes. Do I think he's a drastically better asset? No. So take that as you will. Believe it or not, I know I've grouped Enzo and Njai as buyers in the first 2 questions. I did also receive 2 different people say, would you actually move Iliman and Njai to Enzo? That's the only way that I can afford it. And I know a lot of people in this situation, maybe you've only got like 0.3, 0.4 in the bank, so you can't get from like a Stack or a Reijnders to Enzo. Would I sell Njai to Enzo? I've put probably not. I wouldn't rule this out entirely because, again, if you were to give me a choice between owning the 2 of them right now, I would absolutely say I'd rather have Enzo Fernandes, but I just think Njai is also a great asset. And so I'm in that tricky position where, yes, I would prefer the alternative player, but I don't necessarily want to remove Njai as part of that. So can you get to 2 or 3 transfers and rejig the funds around to maybe get him instead? And like I said, arguably, in fact, not even arguably, if you look at the defensive data this season, Njai's actually got the better fixture this week in comparison to Enzo Fernandes, depending how much of an impact Alderete being out makes. So yeah, I probably wouldn't make this move. But again, if you told me that you really wanted Enzo, I could understand it. And then the final 2 moves, again, I'm a little bit biased because I have Gyökeres and JOAO Pedro and I don't want to sell them. But lots of people saying, would you do Gyökeres to Mateta or Ultimada? Would you do JOAO Pedro to Mateta or Ultimada? The answer for me is no. I want to give them both a little bit longer. But I am 2 things. I am a patient manager, sometimes to my own detriment, and I'm a fixtures-based manager. And I just look at the fixtures over the next 3 to 4 for Gyökeres and JOAO Pedro, and they both have better fixtures than Mateta and Ultimada. That being said, I just told you, Mateta's had 10 big chances in the last 3 games. He's had 15 big chances this season. He's got the second most non-penalty expected goals out of any player, only just trailing behind Erling Haaland. Ultimada has scored in 4 of his opening 5 games. Like, these are 2 players that are in much, much better form, finishing their chances, getting more chances as well than Gyökeres and JOAO Pedro. Gyökeres has gone 3 or 4 games this season without taking a shot. JOAO Pedro is averaging 0.1 XG over the last 5 games. Gyökeres and JOAO Pedro are about as bad as you can get for form, and Mateta and Ultimada are the opposite. So if you are more aggressive, less patient, and more form-based than fixture-based, I don't mind the moves at all. I still think, though, all of that put together, Arsenal are the best defence in the league, Fulham are the 6th best defence, and I think even without Andersen, they're very system-based. I don't think Newcastle score tons there. I think you can give this one more week regardless. And then going into game week 10, whilst it's still going to be difficult because Gyökeres plays Burnley, JOAO Pedro has some fixtures coming up against the likes of Burnley and Wolves too, that's the point when I think you decide. Like, if Gyökeres and JOAO Pedro once again look poor, I get it. Like, there's only so many good fixtures you can give them, but I'm going to give them one more week. Maybe they should be changed to orange then as opposed to red, and maybe I should say I probably wouldn't rather than I wouldn't, but I just know in my heart I wouldn't remove Gyökeres or JOAO Pedro this week. Unless final thing, it was part of a massive set of moves that just hugely upgraded your team, downgrading Gyökeres, for example. So there we go. Hopefully that makes sense. The only transfer that I absolutely love here is probably selling Tijani Reijnders to Enzo Fernandez. That's a move that I would love to make. So guys, very briefly, just on Game Week 9 captaincy, because I know a lot of people are just permanently captaining Erling Haaland. And in all fairness, I'm kind of in that boat right now. I need two things to happen for me to start considering not captaining Haaland. I firstly need to see a notable drop-off from Haaland, or at least a subtle drop-off, where his underlying numbers start to come down, and maybe he's only getting one big chance per 90. Maybe he's only accumulating 0.4 XG per 90, because as things stand, this season, he's accumulated 1.22 non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90. He single-handedly has had more big chances than 13 of the 20 Premier League teams, just alone by himself. The numbers are just astronomical. It's not like he's massively overperforming his data. Now, he is overperforming, and we know that that won't go on forever, but he's also just getting a silly number of chances. The best data on this list after Haaland is Enzo at 0.49 to Haaland's 1.22. I just can't look elsewhere. The other thing that I would need, not only is a drop-off from Haaland, but I would need another player to step up that data. Mateta recently, 0.8 non-penalty expected goal involvement. I need a player like a Saka or a Salah to jump up their data so that they're getting closer to Haaland, and I would then need that player to also have a good fixture. And so when I put that together, Haaland's data's not dropped off a cliff. It's, in fact, sort of steadied itself at 1.22 non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90. None of the players on this list have good data particularly. Like Enzo at 0.49 isn't anything to write home about, and that's the second best on this list. And none of them have a standout fixture. Tell me this week outside of Haaland who has the standout... In fact, you would argue that Haaland's isn't a standout fixture, but of all the other options, Saka against Palace, they're not great, but they're not bad. You say Semenyo against Forest, but obviously with Sean Dyche coming in, he's got a very short period of time to work on that, but they're still they're going to be an okay defence, I would imagine. Under Dyche, it'll probably set them up in a 4-4-2, and they'll defend extremely well. Bruno against Brighton, yeah, that could be an open game. Maybe Salah against Brentford. Enzo and JOAO Pedro against Sunderland, but I just don't look at any of these players and see either a hugely high ceiling or a great fixture. If I were to back against Erling Haaland, because you might say, Villa away, not the easiest fixture. For me, it is probably Saka or Semenyo. I've been really impressed by Saka every time I watch him. He just feels like his general play just feels even crisper, even better. This is more eye test than data, but when I watch him, he feels dangerous. He feels like he could be on the cusp of a big score. So I like him, and I do think Crystal Palace having to travel on Thursday. We know that actually, I think they were playing at home at Selhurst Park. But anyway, playing on a Thursday night, that's not going to be ideal for them in terms of fatigue. They basically played their starting 11, and we know they haven't been perfect defensively. So I don't mind Saka. And Semenyo, maybe you could go down the narrative of Sean Dyche hasn't had that long to work with Nottingham Forest. He's obviously put up good data this season, and he's in incredible form. Again, the likes of Bruno's fine. Salah, Gakpo, Ekitike. You could look at that Brentford game, and Liverpool in the last few have started to click back into gear a little bit in terms of their attack. And then, Enzo Fernandez, JOAO Pedro. I've got Walter Marder on this list as well. I don't mind him as well. But it all feels like you're not trying to get too clever. I don't want to say that and put you off, but it's like you're trying to preempt Haaland blanking, which we've seen no sign of. And you're also trying to just randomly guess on a massive haul. It just doesn't feel right for me right now to back against Erling Haaland. So I'll be going for Haaland captain. I've not considered anyone else. And I need to see those things happen that I spoke about for me to start thinking about going against him. So guys, briefly just discussing a few of your other questions and rounding that up before at the end discussing my own team. I kind of spoke about this in the benching graphic, but a lot of questions coming in, such as that from Jacob, which says, what do we do with Palace assets this week if we own them already? How can I bench Mateta Sarr after last week, but Arsenal defence? It's a difficult one. The first thing I would say is try and predict how this game's going to go. And I know that's difficult to do because you're thinking with your FPL cap on, but maybe try and get rid of your biases and which players you own. Predict the scoreline. That will give you a bit of an idea about what you should do. Because if you're predicting 2-0 to Arsenal, just bench your Crystal Palace assets. Simple as that. You don't think that they'll do particularly well. Equally, if you're thinking, no, I can see Palace scoring, then ignore the fact that you've got double Arsenal defence or you've got Arsenal players because you think Palace will have a good go. And I know that's a simplified way of doing it, and that might not help you. You might say, I don't know which way it's going to go. All of that to say, I would be very okay starting Mateta and Sarr this week. I would not bench Mateta. given the quantity of chances he's getting and also the fact that he's a penalty taker. So Mateta wouldn't be benched. Sarr I can get a little bit more because in the last couple of games, he's not perfect underlying data. He doesn't take set pieces. He doesn't take penalties. And Arsenal's defence is elite. So there is absolutely a world where Sarr is limited to 0 or 1 shots. So yeah, hopefully that helps. In terms of Richards, Gay, Lacroix, I'd be happy benching them just given that they don't have as much attacking threat, and I expect Arsenal to score. Munoz is a player that I wouldn't feel overly comfortable benching, but at the same time, there are better defenders this week. So yeah, hopefully that helps, but Mateta is the one that I wouldn't bench. Sarr I'd be okay benching, as would either defenders. The next question, Young Guna 49, so a couple on Arsenal here. So he says, my wildcard is active. I'm currently on triple Arsenal defence. Is it okay, or do you recommend going with double Arsenal defence and Saka? So if I was on wildcard, I would have double Arsenal defence and Saka because I really rate Saka and I think he's going to do very well over the coming game weeks. Absolutely, though, triple Arsenal defence is viable and I wouldn't hate it at all. If you're looking at value of assets like points per million, Timber, Calafiori and Gabriel would probably be your 3 best Arsenal assets you could own right now. I don't love the Raya pick anymore. Like, I would rather go for Pope. I'd rather go for Sanchez. I'd even drop all the way down to like a Verbruggen or Petrovic. Like, there are plenty, even Lamans of Manchester United looks very good in goal. I wouldn't go for Raya. So I think if it's Timber, Gabriel, Calafiori as your back 3, I don't mind it. But then I'm looking at it and thinking, surely you like Senesi. Surely you think Richards, Munoz, Andersen are good assets too. So, yes, I think 3 Arsenal defenders could work. But I think you're also blocking other good defenders that can also do a good job for you. And then if you're going without Saka, why are you? Like, who is it to squeeze in? Is it to squeeze in Bruno? So you're sacrificing someone like a Senesi in your defence to go for a Bruno instead of Saka. I'm not feeling that massively. So in theory, theoretically, I like the triple Arsenal defence. But considering I don't like Raya, I think the best defensive setup or the best Arsenal setup is probably still Gabriel, Timber, Saka. Hope that's helpful. I don't want to put you off of it, because it could be really, really fruitful. The next question on Arsenal, would you take a -4 to switch Arsenal assets? I'll answer this quickly, no. I don't mind using transfers as I did last week. I pivoted from Raya and Bruno to Pope and Saka because I'd much rather own Saka than Raya, but that was for free, and I still think that that is a slightly suspect use of 2 free transfers. So I would absolutely not be taking a hit, unless it's to sell, like, if it's to get you from like Saliba to Saka and you just think, absolutely, I just don't rate Saliba as an option. And also the other players that you're changing around work to, then maybe. But I would try to do it for free or just not do it at all. Next question. Is it time to bring in Forest assets now that they have a better version of Nuno? I don't want to disrespect Nuno, and I'm not sure Dyche is a better version, but absolutely, once we see a few games under his belt, if they do look really defensively resolute, it's absolutely a move that I'll be looking to make. The fixtures aren't really there to attack, though, for a little while now for Nottingham Forest. And again, there are so many other good defenders to choose from. I'm just not there right now. So again, it's one of those things that you just don't need to preempt. Just wait. And if they do improve, then you can move after that. The final question then, and it's just a little bit of a one to start thinking about in the back of your mind. With getting 5 free transfers for AFCON and the ability to roll up to 5 free transfers, which week do you think's goodness, I'm gonna leave that in. Which week do you think are good to be aggressive and use 4 to 5 free transfers? Goodness me, it's been a long week. So there are the answer to this is there's no correct answer. The way that I'm kind of viewing this, so between game 15 and 16, I believe, I should have checked. I think it's between 15 and 16, we get 5 free transfers for AFCON. Now, you don't have to use them for AFCON. And I should note, you don't get 5 additional free transfers. They just top you up to 5. This means 2 things. It means from then 16 onwards, you're going to have 5 free transfers to use. But also, you need to use all of your free transfers before the point that you get topped up. Because you don't want to get topped up from 4 to 5. You want to get topped up all from the baseline all the way up to 5. So I hope that makes sense. So there's going to be 2 spells of time where you can use a lot of transfers. So the way that I'm viewing this is I think I want to try and get to a stage where up to AFCON and up to the point where we get the additional 5 free transfers, I want to try and get to a stage where a week or 2 before that, I get to 4 or 5 free transfers. I then want to use all of them really aggressively to restructure my squad and get it in a place I'm happy with. And then when we get those 5 free transfers for AFCON, what I'm going to do is hopefully just keep them. And then every week, if I need them, I'll pick them off one by one. And so I'm always in a position of strength. What I don't think you want to do is use them all now, and then when you get them for AFCON, use them all again. And then in game week 17, you're sat there with 1 free transfer when loads of other people have 5. I just think you're going to be behind the curve at that stage. So basically, I think around game week 11, 12, 13, we should be starting to try and get to a position of strength where we have multiple frees to use them, get the 5 additional ones, and then keep them in the pocket for if we need to make moves after that. Hopefully that makes sense. But like I said, there's no correct way to do it. We're all going to get, as long as you play your cards right, the same amount of free transfers to use. And I think you can use them in a variety of ways. So guys, just to finish off with my team then, what am I currently planning going into the deadline? So I've tried to narrow my options down. I know people won't like this, and that's absolutely fine because there are so many ways to play the game. I've not had a good start to the season, and maybe this is why. I want to keep JOAO, PEDRO, and Gyökeres for at least 1 more week. So that does narrow down my options because I don't really have many ways outside of those two to free up funds. So I've basically got an option if I want to bench boost, and then an option if I'm okay not to bench boost. Then, of course, I could just roll the transfer as well. So the option if I want to bench boost is I have to sell Andersen. And I do have ways to free up money, but I think I'll just do Andersen to another defender 4.5 or below. At the moment, I think that would probably be Richards. I could maybe bring in Keane. And I know that then means double up on the Everton defence for the bench boost. But then moving forward, I could, of course, sell Tarkowski to someone like James or potentially Munoz. Or if I free up an Arsenal slot, try to get him to a Timber or Calafiori. So I probably wouldn't carry double Everton defence moving forward. But maybe Keane right now is a better asset to bring in than Richards, especially for the bench boost. But likely I would just bring in Richards and bench boost against Arsenal away. So my bench in that case would be Dubravka against Wolves, Rodon against West Ham, Stack against West Ham, and Richards against Arsenal. Not great, but maybe it's worth it to get out of the way. So option 1, Andersen to Richards. Option 2 is to keep Andersen, not bench boost, and actually upgrade Reijnders to Enzo. If I want to do Reijnders to Enzo, I need to find 1.1 million. And the only way I can see to do that, if I don't want to sell Gyökeres and JOAO, PEDRO, is to downgrade Tarkowski. Now, because it's 1.1 million, I would need to free up, I would only have, I should say, 4.4 million to replace Tarkowski. And the 2 options really for me are Kilman and Van Hecker. Neither of them are fantastic, but I don't know that Tarkowski is perfect as an asset either. When you've got Keane for 1 million less, he's not shown much attacking threat. Clean sheet chances over the next 5 aren't that great. And most weeks, I can get away with playing Andersen, Gabriel, Senesi, and I've got Rodon as backup. So I'm not sure I need also to have Tarkowski in there too. And I do really want Enzo Fernandez, but it just feels like as a set of 2 transfers, that's not that strong. So really, I am probably leaning to roll at the moment. But if you could see something else you would do with my team, let me know. And then maybe going from a position of strength with 3 free transfers next week makes a little bit more sense. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 9 deadline decisions video. I hope you found that helpful. And if you have, please do smash that like button and make sure to subscribe as well. I really do appreciate it. Make sure, do not miss the deadline on Friday evening. I'll be doing a deadline stream as always. So hopefully see you there for that. But until next time, bye-bye.